everyone, hope you're doing well. Welcome to a new video. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Seb, and today I'm going to be talking about the current situation of the world, pandemic, vaccines, all these things. I made a few questions, a few polls on my Instagram a few days ago. I want to share the results with you and share my stances on all these questions. Before we get started, I want to ask you to subscribe and hit the notification button and to stay up to date with all these videos. And also, you can download my free ebook available in 20 languages about animal rights and philosophy, logical fallacies mainly, that will help you a lot in your communication and your conversations with non-vegans when you're doing activism, when you're hanging out with your friends, your family members. So check that out as well. So the first question that I asked is, are you pro-vaccine or anti-vaccine? I was actually surprised at this. 78% said that they are pro and 22% said that they are anti-vaccination. One thing I want to say is that the reason why I decided to do this video is because I really realized there's a lack of actual normal open conversation and discussion about this, and I really blame social media for a lot of it, because it has become this kind of war between pro and anti, and no one's really trying to have a conversation with the other. Like, how do you even think that this is gonna help us in any way? We have all these separate and different and opposing ideas, and the solution that most of the world and the media is giving us is don't talk, just fight and hate each other and point fingers and blame each other. And I think that's really dangerous. Not only dangerous, I also think it's kind of stupid, because as humans, that's one of the amazing things that we can do, right? We can communicate. It's really stupid that we're not even able to have the most normal conversations about this. And I think what's really important is we have to ask the critical questions. We have to bring up these conversations, because there's a lot of things that people don't know, or it's hidden, or it's censored, and I don't think that's making it in any way any better, no matter what the intention is. Personally, I watch a lot of Russell Brand's videos, and I really enjoy it because he doesn't necessarily share what his stance is. He just shares what's going on and all the updates, and raises the critical questions. And without having these critical questions, I really believe people aren't really forming their own opinion. They're actually just consuming what the media or social media is telling them to consume, and downloading that opinion and putting it in their head and then throwing it out while fighting with others. The second question is, only answer if you are pro-vaccines. Do you believe people should be forced to take it? 27% said yes, 73% said no. Now, one important thing I want to say is a few people said you should have specified what you mean by forcing. Do you mean like literally physically forcing? Or do you mean making life difficult on those who can't, who are not getting it, to the point that they're kind of forced? And actually that is what I meant. I meant like, if you decide not to take it and they make it literally impossible for you to do anything, you know, just even enter a shop or go to a restaurant or things like that, I think that's kind of indirectly forcing, because at that point the only solution a person has is to literally leave the city, live in a cabin in the woods or somewhere, and just live sustainably by themselves, which would be amazing, to be honest, but still, that's what I meant. I think that is kind of still forcing something. And I was surprised that even though 78% of people that voted were actually pro-vaccine, only 27% of them believe that people should be forced to take the vaccine. The third question is, do you trust the pharmaceutical industry? I think the numbers are really, really interesting, actually. 27% said yes, they trust the pharmaceutical industry, 73% said that they don't, which is again really, really amazing, because if you just go back a few questions, 78% are pro-vaccine, while only 27% trust the pharmaceutical industry. And the question after that is, do you trust the government or politicians? And now it's 9% said yes, 91% said no. I think this is very obvious, but I did want to get the numbers. And the next question is, do you trust close friends who are professionals in the field and tell you that the vaccines are safe? 71% said yes, and of course 29% said no. I think this is really interesting, because even though only 27% trust the pharmaceutical industry, 71% would trust a professional if they know them personally. And I asked this question because I do have very close friends who are actually part of the industry, or even working on the whole vaccine part as well. Now, the next question is, if you are against vaccines for any reason, but need one to travel for work, see your family, would you end up taking it? 65% of people who are against vaccines would take it because they might need it to go to work or see their families. And I ask this because I am in this situation. I will need to travel, I will need to see my family, I will need to do activism, and for that I would need the vaccine. So that's why I asked, and yeah, 65% would do it. The next question is, do you feel that this subject has made people people become black and white, as in you're either leftist and pro-vaccine or right-wing anti-vaccine. 74% of people agree. And this is where I have lost all my patience and faith in humanity, because it blows my mind that people are feeding this narrative by the media. It's like we have no more critical thinking ability. People don't make their decisions anymore. They don't sit down and actually ask themselves, do I agree with this? And I don't blame them. It's the media that's doing. It's the brainwashing. Everywhere you go, it's the same thing. And I think it's really dangerous, because we're basically becoming these robots, right? And this is, of course, mostly the influence that comes from the West. This war of like either this or that. Anything in between also becomes that, or this. And I think that's really dangerous, because we are complex human beings, and every single human being has a different set of values, morals, experiences, thoughts, feelings, emotions, and we are minimized into two options: right-wing anti-vaccine, left-wing pro-vaccine. And then I asked myself, since when does something medical become related to politics? And of course, in some way it's related, but you can still have your critical thoughts outside of politics. I did have one person reach out to me and said, actually, I am like a leftist, but I am against the vaccine. And it was kind of refreshing for me to see, like, okay, there are some, let's say, intersections, not everyone is falling into this. And that is kind of why I also watch Russell Brand's videos, because he does target this point a lot. And of course, he is much more left-leaning than right-wing, I would say. But it's interesting to see that just consuming the narrative that the media gives us, we can so easily turn against each other to the point where we don't even communicate. We literally just stop communicating, blame the other person. Right-wing anti-vaccine would blame the left-wing pro-vaccine for tyranny, for being completely against personal choice, and then call them hypocrites because, personal choice and abortion, all those things are involved as well. In politics, if you're left-wing, you are pro-abortion. If you are right-wing, you're anti-abortion. Like all these things, it's literally like they are born, and instead of being able to think and make their own decisions, they're like, this comes with all these sets of values, and this comes with all these sets of values and stances. And somehow people just say, okay, I'll take that one and just accept everything that comes with it. And there's no more individuality. Like, what kind of society are we building, It just really frustrates me that we're not having like actual open conversations. And I even saw Russell Brand made a video on this. There was a plan of doing an open discussion about COVID-19, the pandemic, the lockdowns, and the vaccines by scientists, between scientists, and it didn't take place. And obviously all of this creates some doubt. Now, before we go into that part, I want to continue finishing these stories. The next one said, do you think we should have more open discussions and exchange ideas while being fully open to change our stances? 94% said yes, 6% said no. Kind of weird to say no to this, but it's alright. The last question is, do you believe it's okay to test them on other animals, as in test the vaccines? 96% said no, 4% said yes. Of course, you would know my opinion would be against experimenting on other animals. First of all, for ethical reasons. Second of all, because the scientific data that we have shows that a lot of animal experiments for scientific reasons don't really give us the results that we need. It's just an industry that is alive simply because it makes a lot of money. It generates a lot of money. So, now that we have talked about all of this, I want to talk about what I think and my stance on several things. I believe that we have completely lost, as I said, our ability to have individual thoughts, individual questions. We also kind of think that we have to have an answer and stance on everything. Like, I personally don't have a final stance on all of this. I don't, just because I'm not well informed. I don't believe I have enough information, enough education, enough understanding of how all of this works for me to have a yes or no black and white answer. And that's completely fine. And it blows my mind that more people don't have this sense, because I wonder how many of you actually understand how vaccines work. A friend of mine asked me, do you trust the vaccine? And I said, I don't know, because I don't even know a single thing about vaccines. I literally don't know what they are. And they may be bad, they may be good. A lot of vaccines in the past have saved millions of lives. And thanks to them, we are not now facing like certain diseases that are no longer a threat to humanity. But I don't know. I actually don't know. A lot of pharmaceutical products tend to be good sometimes, and then they turn out to be bad and they're taken off the market. And we're gonna get to that as well. So it's completely fine to not have a final answer, What really upsets me is that we are taking all these answers that are there for us and just making it ours as if we came up with that conclusion ourselves. And I would say 90% of us have not. Now, one thing I want to say is when it comes to people who are pro-vaccine, I don't like the fact that people who are pro-vaccine, obviously if this doesn't apply to you, then it doesn't apply, but I don't like it that they attack people who are anti-vaccine for not trusting the pharmaceutical industry and taking the vaccine. And the reason why I don't appreciate this is because I'm pretty sure there's a very, very long list of reasons why you should not trust these companies. They don't have a clear history. If these companies were human beings, they would be the last people I would form friendships with, all right? So I completely understand that people don't feel comfortable injecting their body with a vaccine that comes from companies who have horrible histories. All right, so I did some research, very little research, however, I did some of it. And I do want to say, as always, with these subjects, I may be wrong on some things. Feel free to correct me. That's completely fine. It's completely fine to make a mistake. Just because it's social media doesn't mean that I have all the perfect answers and I believe that everything I'm saying is forever right and never wrong. Okay, so if I do make any mistake, feel free to let me know, send me a message, leave a comment, whatever, you know that. So when it comes to Pfizer, for example, you can check this. It is on the website of the United States government. Pfizer had to agree to a settlement of the largest healthcare fraud in history, the largest one in history. This is the company that is making the vaccines that people are kind of indirectly being forced, maybe not so much right now, but I think they will be eventually, to take. And I believe that it's completely fine for those people to go like, I don't really know if I want to take a product made by a company who has been involved in the largest healthcare fraud in history. They had to pay $2.3 billion for fraudulent marketing. Can you imagine? This company that makes medicine, it's part of the pharmaceutical industry that is supposed to save lives, had messed up so badly that they had to pay $2.3 billion for fraudulent marketing. And keep in mind, this was a criminal fine that they had to pay. So this is one thing they've done. Another thing that Pfizer has done is they went into a town, or like a state, I think, in Nigeria, and they started testing a drug on kids without really sharing this information or getting the consent or openly sharing the dangers of what they're doing with the parents. And many kids died. That is really not ethical, you know? And so they went to Africa to test on people of color because they are seen as less important, of course, and there are less regulations there, or I think so at least. They thought they can get away with it, but they got caught. Not only did they get caught because of this, WikiLeaks documents showed that they hired investigators to see if they can have anything on the judge in order to make the judge drop the case. This is Pfizer for you. Now, again, as I said, I don't have my final stance of all of this. Just because I'm sharing this doesn't mean I'm anti-vaccine. However, I'm sharing it so that you realize people have a very good reason to not trust these companies. AstraZeneca, another company that makes vaccines, pled guilty a few years ago for healthcare crimes and had to pay $355 million. Again, this is shared not by some weird conspiracy pages, it is on the website of the United States government. Another settlement they had to make was $520 million for off-label drug marketing. Do you see now why people are hesitant? Like, I completely understand. And what upsets me is that pro-vaccine people who are completely free to trust these companies don't really take into consideration that with a history like that, I think it's very fair for people not to trust them. Johnson & Johnson, another company that is making vaccines, was told to pay $2.2 billion to resolve criminal and civil investigations regarding off-label marketing and kickbacks to doctors and pharmacists. Now, one of the latest cases of Johnson & Johnson was a $2 billion penalty for cancer-causing substances in their baby powder, something I have used while growing up. So that being said, another major red flag for me is that these companies are putting a patent to their vaccines, which means no one who has the information of what the vaccine has or contains or how to make it is allowed to make it in order to vaccinate people to prevent any death or obviously kind of work on ending this pandemic. The reason why they put a patent, and I asked my friend this who works in the vaccine industry, I asked her, is there any other reason other than financial gain for these companies to patent the vaccine? And she said no. So my problem here is that if you are pro-vaccine and you are attacking blaming anti-vaccine people and saying that they are causing more people to die, which is something that I see common. Why don't you attack these companies for patenting their vaccines, not making it possible for poorer countries to make their own vaccines and save lives if you believe that the vaccine saves lives? That is, I think, I'm not saying if you're not doing this, you're doing that, then everything you're saying is not accepted. But don't you see that there's a double standard in what you're doing? And I say this with the best intentions, because I believe if you're doing that, deep inside you have good intentions. I think that the fact that these companies are working on it in a way that they would rather countries where they don't have a good economy to buy the vaccines, they would rather these people die than let them patent the vaccine and make it themselves. And I think this is so disturbing. I think this is the most inhumane, uncompassionate, unscientific, unethical, immoral thing that anyone can do. And obviously, I wish there was something more that we can do about it, but the power of these industries is massive. They have a lot of political power, they have a lot of lobbying. We know how they work. Now, that being said, I talked a lot, I keep on saying, like pro-vaccine attacking anti-vaccine. The opposite happens as well. So I want to talk about that so you don't think I'm only talking about pro-vaccine people. When it comes to anti-vaccine people, those who are against taking the vaccine, I urge you to look into doctors who you trust and listen to what they're sharing. All right. For me, that was very important because we don't understand. We don't know the science. Okay. So I cannot claim that it's bad unless I have just as much education or more than the people, the professionals who are saying it's good. And I know there's a massive red flag here. A lot of doctors who are saying it's bad are being censored. And I think that's obviously something I should have mentioned earlier when I said the communication isn't being shared publicly. No one's talking about it. I think that's a massive problem here. But I do believe that someone who is anti-vaccine should at least do some effort into understanding how vaccines work and whether or not this vaccine is efficient, and look into the studies. Okay, if the studies, and based on what I've seen so far, the numbers that are coming out of studies, they're kind of promising. Okay, so I cannot say that the vaccine doesn't work because, again, I can very superficially understand what the numbers are saying. However, another thing I want to say is that anti-vaccine people, when I say this, for example, I say like, you're not a doctor or you don't have as much education, don't have that stance straight away. I also want to say that when it comes to their argument, they can say, well, Bill Gates is not a doctor. Why is he so involved in all of this? And you know what? I completely understand. Why is Bill Gates involved in all of this? Like, okay, you can fund if you want, you can put the money. But I have seen a video of him from more than a year ago saying eventually people are going to have to get vaccines and they will not be able to travel anywhere unless they get the vaccine. And at the time I thought like, no, of course not. And a lot of things that I had seen people share on Instagram, people who we call conspiracy theorists, a lot of the things that they were sharing were just called a conspiracy, but now it's happening. So I think that kind of shows that a lot of those conspiracies are actually just becoming spoiler alerts for what's gonna come, and I think that's really disturbing. But anyway, back to the subject. I believe if someone is anti-vaccine, stop just blaming and attacking those who are pro-vaccines. A lot of pro-vaccines people might have the reason to believe that the vaccine works, okay? So I would say just engage in normal, civil, open conversations on both sides. I don't care what you believe in. All I want to ask you is to be critical, be open for changing your mind. Even if you've seen the best evidence, be open for changing your mind because maybe someone else has better evidence than you, okay? So I'm not gonna make this any longer. This has been a long video already. I want to thank you for your time for watching this. This video is probably gonna get demonetized because of YouTube and the subject that I'm talking about. So if you wish to support my work, my online or offline activism, everything, make sure to check out my website, SEBALEX.org. I would really appreciate all your support. Major shout out to all my patrons. I am so grateful for your help. Also, remember to subscribe and hit the notification button and get that free ebook. And lastly, remember to check out my podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all the other platforms. I'll see you in the next video.